Hello YouTubers, Buster Gundo here. The current time is 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's date, November 17th, 2023. And as of the time of this recording, it's been 2 weeks since I've finished Haunting Ground. So, here's my review. We're going to be going through the good, the bad, what I would have changed, and my final score out of 10, and my final score out of 5. So as you guys know, I've been trying to keep my game reviews spoiler free, just in case any of you want to check out these games for yourself. So, in the vein of not spoiling anything, I will be omitting details that can pertain to story, plot, character identities, and possible ending choices. Hopefully you guys can understand. Let's start off with the good, shall we? So far, what I liked about this game was the atmosphere. Each corridor felt different in the sense that even if you were running through various corridors, you could get a sense of where you're at, but also where you need to go. The scenery changing made it easier to discern where you needed to be and if you were on the right track or not. Next up is the sound design. I enjoyed the music that played in the background as I went around, running through each corridor trying to avoid near-death experiences. I also enjoyed the fact that some of the characters had a different version of the main song depending on who that character was. Next up is the voice acting. The main character didn't sound exactly as I thought she would sound, but I enjoyed her voice nonetheless. The overall voice acting was pretty good. I enjoyed each character's voice. They were very distinct and easy to discern from each other. You could get a sense for the emotion in each character's voice, leading to an overall great experience. And that leads me into my next segment about the character design. I enjoyed each character's design being distinct from each other, each having a unique sense of identity. I can give them credit in the fact that none of them felt the same as each other, even though they all share the same main areas. Each one has a very distinctive personality, which you learn more about throughout playing the game, of course, but I won't spoil any of that. Now this next one is a bit of a two-parter. I'll explain later, but for the time being, we'll focus on the puzzles. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a puzzle guy, but as I said before, this will be a two-parter, so stick with me. I liked some of the puzzles in this game. When you really figure out what you needed to do through a little bit of trial and error, your brain has that light bulb moment where you put all the pieces together and it clicks when you finally get the answers right. Now, as I said, this is a two-parter, so stick around for that. And the final thing that I liked about this game was the fact that all of your deaths do not count against you in your final score for the game. I think that's a really good thing because in some cases you may die due to BS reasons, and I really wouldn't want to be penalized for the amount of times I died in this game. And now, with all of the good things about this game out of the way, let's discuss the bad things, shall we? And boy, do I have a lot of bad things to say about this game. To keep things as short and concise as possible, I'll be listing each thing that annoyed me, taking care to be simple with my explanations. Next up comes the main character's running and walking speed. Now, the main character has a tendency to walk throughout most of the game. However, by pressing a certain button, you can make her run. Her running speed is abysmal at best, however, and especially when it becomes tense. When things get tense and the enemy is chasing after you, she will fumble a lot. She will run into doors and not open them. She will fumble her way through things, and she'll decide to slow down at the worst possible time, leading to your inevitable demise, which will in turn make you frustrated. You can probably tell I'm a bit salty, as through my playthrough I died a lot due to her inability to run like I needed her to. That leads into my next segment, the control scheme to this game. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the controls do what they're supposed to do. However, one control in particular annoys me to high heaven, and that is the ability to open and close doors with a simple button press. Now, she can open doors as long as she gets close to them. However, the real frustration comes is when an enemy is chasing after you and you need to close the door behind you. She will run through a door just far enough for her not to be able to turn around and close it behind her as if she were an actual thinking person. Common sense would tell you if a person is chasing after you and you have the opportunity to close the door behind you, you would do it at the first chance. However, with her, it's like she has to make a decision, a conscious decision to close the door behind her every single time. And it's frustrating because it leads to the enemy catching up to you and eventually killing you, which will make you want to throw your controller across the room. As you can tell, I'm a bit salty, and I apologize for that in advance. Now, remember earlier in the video when I said that the puzzles was a two-parter and that I would come back to it later? Yeah, now's about the time to come back to that. Man, are some of these puzzles frustrating. During my personal playthrough, I had to look up a guide multiple times due to the amount of frustration I was feeling during that time. But don't get me wrong, I genuinely tried to figure them out before I went to the guide. But for the love of Odin, I couldn't figure them out. So I said, screw it, I'm going to a guide. Then once I looked at the guide, things started to get put together easier. They started clicking. Which, honestly, if I need a guide to explain to me how your puzzle works, then your puzzle is not good. It's not cohesive enough for me. Oh, and we're coming up to my most annoyed part right about now. One of the most annoying parts for me in this entire game was the main character's ability to panic. I don't like the panic function in this game at all. It makes things infinitely more difficult. Instead of running like a normal person, she runs like she's drunk, stumbles and falls into everything. And once she starts tumbling and stumbling and falling, the enemy can catch up really quick no matter how slow they are. And honestly, I'm glad I didn't have a mic for this playthrough, because you guys would have probably had to put your headphones down at the amount of yelling at the screen I've done throughout this entire game because of that reason alone. Believe me when I say, the panic feature could have been reworked entirely. And now for the most annoying part of this entire game. The button functionality. Or should I say, button responsiveness. I have had so many deaths in this game because of the open door or closed door button being unresponsive half the time. It's very, very irritating when you press a button multiple times during a game only for that certain button's function to not work. It made me frustrated how many times I died because no matter how much I pressed that button, she would take her slow, sweet time opening and closing the door. Or sometimes she just wouldn't open the door at all, leading to my inevitable demise. Now look, I am not a game developer. Let me stress that now. I am not a game developer. But for the love of Odin, if you're gonna have me pressing the same button multiple times in the game, please have someone test it for its functionality and fix it as many times as necessary for that button press to be concise. Every time you press a button, it should give you the exact result you're looking for. Every single time. No excuses. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. The final part of this video. What I would have fixed in my squad of 5 and 10. One of the things I would have fixed was, instead of having the dog commands be slotted to the analog stick, should say the right analog stick, I would have made it on the D-pad instead. Because honestly, I feel like in the heat of things, you're not going to remember which combination of movements you need to do in order to get Huey to do what you want, using the right analog stick, of course. The next thing I would have changed would have been getting rid of the panic function, or at least lessening the effects to where she wouldn't stumble and tumble. But instead of that, it would just make the screen harder to see, little by little. Because honestly, in the heat of things, in the heat of running from enemies, you don't want to trip and tumble and fall. Making the enemies get to you a lot closer, it's going to be frustrating when that happens. Lastly, my final score for this game out of 10 would be 7 out of 10. And my final score out of 5 would be 3.5 out of 5. And with that comes the end of our video. If you liked what you saw and heard, you know what to do already. I'm not going to go with the whole YouTube spiel. I know that gets annoying after a while. So I'll leave off with this. And as I say this time and every time, Buster Gundo, signing off now. Be safe, be smart, be silent. For whatever's done in darkness, eventually comes to light. Be safe out there. Also, one last thing before I head out. I will say this much. I would like you guys to please do me a favor and comment constructive criticism in the comment section below. I know I don't normally ask for this, but I'm trying to make these review videos as best I can, improving with each video. If you could do that, that would be appreciated. Thank you for your time.